tell us a little bit about this, that kind of starting phase of Bridge and what your role was in that process?
Well, by 1991, in what's now DFID, but then was called the Overseas Development Administration, we'd had about 4 years of really trying to get what was then called Women in Development on the Ministry's agenda. And by 91, things were coming together a bit, kind of more staff, a bit of money, a bit of influence, and sufficient influence that we were getting kind of more demands from different parts of DFID for information.
Right.
And we were also getting kind of demands from the Minister's office and occasional parliamentary questions that needed backed up with information. And we were still very few in number, and I was beginning to panic about, where we were going to get all this information from very, very quickly. So I asked colleagues in the DAC, what's now DAC GenderNet, but then it was called DAC WID Group, did they have similar problems? And yes, we weren't the only ones suffering from this. So I said, what if we had a kind of, I'm not sure I even used the phrase help desk, but that was the idea, of being able to kind of ring up and say, within 3 days we need to know everything about the status of women and girls in Ruritania, right? Can you please give us a brief? So, interesting enough, the initial idea was very much a kind of quick help desk function. And so we started discussing it in the DAC WID group. And then we had a meeting of the Bureau here in IDS. And it also gave us an opportunity to meet with Susan Eucas, with whom I'd been having preliminary discussions about would the IDS gender people be interested in doing this. Those were the kind of days when you didn't bother to go out for tendering for stuff. It was all, just seemed to me, IDS seemed a good place to do it. One of the other reasons we liked the idea of IDS doing it was because we were accumulating, there was so much grey literature being accumulated, reports of gender this and women and that. And of course this was the days before electronic digital storage. And so there was a concern that really valuable resources were just getting lost. Agencies commissioned reports and had nowhere to store them, so they threw them away. And whether we could use IDS as a depository for all this literature, which I think is where Sianda must have been born from, right? Because the part of the agreement then, as it got set up, the contract with IDS, is that we would send all our stuff to IDS and they would look after it. And the way to get it going was that we needed a sufficient number of members of the WID group to agree to kind of take out shares in it, that they would commit themselves to funding it on a share basis initially for 3 years, I think. Now the interesting thing is that I discovered that this priority to have quick briefs was more an issue for DFID than it was for the other member states, who immediately started commissioning long, really in-depth pieces. So the quick turnaround stuff rapidly disappeared off Bridge's agenda, and it started specialising in doing these studies which various member states were commissioning from Bridge.
20 years is quite a long time.
Yes.
And so if you think back over the last 20 years, what's your kind of best memory of Bridge's work, apart from the beginning phases then?
But of course, Sianda, really spoke to one of the original reasons for founding Bridge, was to have this really amazing digital resource of largely grey literature. The cutting edge packs was a brilliant idea. Yeah. And of course I particularly like the one on unpaid care, because that's one of my own priority concerns at the moment, so I think that one's great. I think the one on sexuality was very good. But I think the whole idea of the cutting edge packs was extremely good, and just in fact the thing that people need when they're working inside development organisations, and in many ways does also respond to that original need I need something very urgently about gender and climate change. And the way the cutting edge packs are designed, you can find that quick stuff you need immediately to put into a note to the minister. You can get access to it very quickly.
Message for Bridge? What are your hopes for Bridge in the future?
Happy birthday, Bridge. I'll be gone when the 40th birthday comes around. I hope Bridge will still be there, and I just want to say one last thing. It was a fantastic title, Bridge. I thought that was so clever to call it Bridge. I'm sure it's helped Bridge to continue to bridge the gaps between knowledge, power and influence.
Lovely.